this is a video with all of my best SAT reading and writing tricks compiled in one place. I'm gonna go over my 3 best tricks, giving you an overview of each, and then solving one problem with each just to show you how to use it and to prove that it actually works. I'm gonna give you my SAT vocab trick, which can kind of be applied to all of the other reading problems as well, more or less. I'm going to give you my SAT verbs trick, and then finally my SAT bullet points trick. So if you're looking to be able to sneak behind College Board's back just a little bit with how you're answering problems on test day, then this video is for you. So first off, SAT vocab problems. Guess what? You really shouldn't have to read that list of vocab words that you have to pick from until you basically already know the answer. The trick is just to read the passage itself, and then based on the context within that passage, create a word to fill in the vocab blank. If you have a harder time comprehending passages like that, then this trick is going to be a little bit tough for you. All the reading and writing problems, though, are going to generally be tough if you have a hard time comprehending the vocab passages. But typically you should be able to take the context of the paragraph, as long as you're able to understand that paragraph, and fill in that blank with your own word. Then you compare your word to the answer choices and pick the closest one, and that's going to be 100% of the time the right answer. So for that practice problem. So just so you know, this is module 2 of practice test number 5 on Blue Book practice tests. So let's go ahead and answer a vocab problem. So as I mentioned, you don't need to look at the answer choices on the right side, just look at the passage on the left, and let's try to answer here. Mary Engel Pennington, a chemist who helped advance home refrigeration, undoubtedly made a substantial impact on society, but her place in our historical memory is perhaps more blank than that of Stephanie Kwolek, who invented the incredibly strong material known as Kevlar, an accomplishment for which she will long be remembered. So I noticed that they're comparing Mary to Stephanie. The passage says that Mary undoubtedly made a substantial impact, but her place in our historical memory is perhaps more something else than Stephanie. Well, what is Stephanie? She will long be remembered for her inventions. So what I would guess here is that she's less known to some extent. She's more unknown than Stephanie Kwolek for her work, even though she did have a substantial impact, because it talks about how incredibly strong and well known that Stephanie's invention of Kevlar was. And so Mary's might be perhaps more short-term lasting in our historical memory. So that's kind of the idea I'm going for with that blank. Let's go and check on the other side. Permanent, that's exactly opposite of what I was thinking, not more permanent, because Stephanie, we know, was actually very permanent. She will long be remembered. Tentative is kind of weak or reluctant, maybe. So I would guess that could be our answer based on my guesses earlier. Accomplishment isn't quite as well known. Warranted, yes, of course, her work certainly warranted a historical memory. It doesn't talk about whether Pennington versus Kwolek actually deserved or warranted memory more than another, so I don't think that's it either. And prominent, again, is kind of just in the way of permanent. It goes against what we're trying to say here. So tentative would definitely be our answer. Hopefully you can see here how I was able to use the passage in order to come up with synonym, get an idea for what that would be in that blank, and then cross off the answers that didn't match over here. A lot of them, in fact, pretty strongly contradicted my idea, which you'll find a lot if you use this method. It's not that hard oftentimes to differentiate between words and figure out which one fills in the blank. The only problem happens when you don't know the meaning of words. However, if you don't know the meaning of one, you again don't have a big problem, because if one of the words that you do know the meaning of doesn't match, then you know it has to be the one that you don't know. The biggest problem is when you have two words that you don't really know, in which case you can't really do much about other than looking at the stems and roots of words.
Okay, my SAT verbs trick. This one is a little bit hard to explain. Basically, you don't really need to look at the passage at all. You just need to look at the answer choices and see which one doesn't match up with the rest. There can be some different reasons for why it might not match up. Some ways to tell is by trying to plug different subjects in with those verbs. Like plug one subject, like they, in next to all those verbs, like they will, they are, they is, that kind of thing, and see what sounds right, because usually there's going to be one that sounds wrong and the others will sound completely right. If you can't tell that there's an odd one out, like with a subject, then you can sometimes tell that a verb typically wouldn't be by itself in a sentence. It's like to be or something that you would have another word with, like an infinitive or a participle. And then sometimes the tense is also different. Like 3 of them are talking about actions that happened in the past, and one of them is an action that happened in the future. That one would stand out. So usually it's whether the verb is independent or dependent, whether an action happened in the past or the future, or whether the subject doesn't make sense with it. Like all of them but one are plural or something like that. So just plug them in with different sentences and see if one sticks out. Typically, you can do this fairly quickly. Sometimes, if your English skills are really strong, you could actually do it faster by just reading the passage. But especially if you're struggling with figuring out what makes sense in that problem, or if your skills are really strong, but you're just stumped by one particular problem for whatever reason, this still is a handy dandy trick to keep in your back pocket. So for the practice problem.
So here we have a verbs problem, and we don't need to look at the passage here, we just need to look at the answer choices. So let's go ahead and put a subject in for each of these and see if there's an odd one out. If we said he, for example, he was revealing, he has revealed, he reveals, he reveal. That one immediately sticks out to me. You could say they was revealing, they has revealed, they reveals, they reveal. They make sense with that one, but not the 3 ones above. I would say that's probably it, but we can go ahead and also plug in my other options. Let's see which ones happen in which case. So was happens in the past, has happens in the past, reveals happens probably in the present. It could be the future, but probably the present, and this one's present as well. So there's not an automatically odd one out based on that. And then independent versus dependent. All of these could be used in a sentence without an additional verb. So I don't think that one could be stick out as well. So I don't think that is how you tell which one is sticking out either. You could say he was revealing, he has revealed, he reveals, or they reveal. But anyway, let's go ahead and plug the answer back in just to prove that, in fact, it does make sense in this sentence. In a painting titled The Milkmaid by Johannes Vermeer, the artist prominently features a breadbasket, milk pitcher, and bowl. Such quotidian objects, depicted in exquisite detail by Vermeer, a painter celebrated for his naturalism, reveal the daily minutiae of a 17th century Dutch household. Yeah, that makes sense. You can see how I was able to figure out which one was the odd one out in this case, and then plug it back in, and in fact, it actually worked. So,
SAT bullet points. You also don't have to read the passage for this one, which is kind of crazy. You don't need to look at those bullet points. Just need to look at the question. Oftentimes it'll ask you for a comparison between 2 things, for a generalization, but there's only going to be one right answer. So just make sure that you hit each of the 2 things that the problem is asking you to find. You can use your highlighter to annotate and make sure that both of those things are whatever answer choice you pick, but typically you don't need to read the bullet points in order to solve this problem, and that saves you a lot of time on SAT day. But anyway, for that passage.
So here we have an SAT bullet points problem, and we don't need to look at those bullets, we just need to look at the question. Let's go ahead and read that quickly and find the two main parts of that question that we need to make sure is in each of the answers. The student wants to emphasize a similarity between two sculptures. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish this goal? So we want to find a similarity between two sculptures. So let's go ahead and read these answer choices. Catlet's students aspire depicts two features supporting each other in the pursuit of equality. So it would be very easy to say, okay, two figures means two sculptures. However, it's important to note that the name of the sculpture is Students Aspire. There are not two sculptures here, there's just one. So it doesn't meet our criteria. Going down below, it says recognition and Students Aspire. So that's two sculptures. Both show African American figures and poses that symbolize supportive relationships. So yeah, they both have a similarity. It's probably your answer, but let's go and keep going. Catlett completed recognition in 1970 and Students Aspire in 1978. It does mention two sculptures, but it doesn't have a similarity. In fact, there are differences between dates. D. The figures in recognition have features that are rounded and distinct, while the figures in Students Aspire have sharply defined features. So you can see here, two sculptures, but there are differences. They talk about the differences in the sculptures themselves. This is not it. It's definitely B, which has two sculptures and a similarity between the two. And we didn't even need to read the bullets.
I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and that it helps you to be able to speed through those SAT reading and writing problems. Now that you don't have to twiddle your thumbs over which vocab problem to pick or read those SAT verb passages or those SAT bullet points, you'll be able to get through the problems faster and be more confident on test day. Now, just before we finish, don't forget to check out the other videos on my channel, because I do have lots of other great tips on there, not just for the reading and writing section, which I got a 799 on the SAT, by the way, but also for the math section, which I got a 780 on. So don't forget to go check those out. I'm a high school senior this year and would greatly appreciate your support as I'm preparing for college, doing my college applications, and putting my YouTube channel on my activities section. So again, would appreciate your engagement with my channel. I would love to answer any requests for videos that you have, and just I want you to be successful preparing for college, test taking, and all that type of thing. So feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. But anyway, with that said, I know your time is super important, so I'll go ahead and go. Make sure you check out my other videos, and I'll see you again next time.